This is This Week in Common Sense, starring Paul Jacob. My name is Timothy Virkala, and this episode is for the first full week of 2021. Once again, you wrote 5 pieces in 1 week, but we're going to talk about one especially. But the first one was Distill This on Monday.
Yes, and I think the key line there is, so everybody is happy now. The way you're happy when the sledgehammer swinging down doesn't bash you in the head after all. And this is Distill This. It was Monday's commentary, and it was about the alcohol makers, people who make bourbon and scotch and all kinds of things that I don't drink, but I hear are wonderful and good for you. I'm joking. But anyway, when we had this pandemic and a crisis, they went into action and they got hand sanitizer. We had problems finding it. Everybody rushed to the store and bought copious amounts, and other people couldn't find any, and their hands were dripping in COVID, and somebody came to the rescue. And what did our government do for them? Maybe a plaque, a prize, a medal, a cash, just shipped cash to their bank account? No. They got a tax bill because doing the hand sanitizer made them a different sort of industry company. They owed $14,000. So that seemed to be the just worst signal you could send, the type of signal that says we live in an absurd world where the government is actively trying to wreck everything, even when people are doing everything they can to help. Well, they decided not to charge them the tax. Okay, we're going to let it go. But it just seems to me we ought to remember that.
The generosity of government. We're not going to tax you like we could have and really should have.
Yes. Well, and I've had friends when I posted it, and people, some argue, we need that tax money, so they got it, so we can take it from them. But I think a lot of us envision a world where there's just certain common sense. That's kind of why we chose the name, that and my buddy Tom Paine, and so this just doesn't make not any. It's like negative common sense. We did a second piece. We do a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth. That's the way Monday through Friday works. But I should mention to people, I think I have COVID now. I have a relative who has COVID. My daughter's not just a relative. I wasn't sure I wanted to say that, but. And we're doing okay. It's not serious yet. Trying to take care of ourselves. But if I cough, if an ambulance comes and drags me away, I just wanted you to know why. Anyway, I'm trying to be light. Tuesday's piece was Finally Fed Up. And of course, it gets to what we're finally going to talk about here today. But it's about Mayor Ted Wheeler, America's mayor in Portland, Oregon. And Ted Wheeler has decided enough is enough. Except he didn't really say it that way. You should see, this is the mayor who went out and spoke to the rioters and the folks. In fact, they got in scuffles with the security, and he's up there saying how wonderful they are and how evil Donald Trump is and so on. This mayor has now decided that there's too much rioting and vandalism and looting and destruction. But you should go to thisiscommonsense.org and Finally Fed Up. It was Tuesday's piece, and find out why he's finally fed up with rioting and destruction and law breaking. Wednesday's piece was Bully for Your Thoughts. And this is Professor William Jacobson, Cornell Law. He's written some things critical of Black Lives Matter. And there is an effort to they've been trying to stop people from going to his classes. That hasn't been successful because some people want to hear what he has to say. And they've also are now trying to get him fired. But he pretty much, it's called Bully for Your Thoughts and Bully for William Jacobson. He said, try to fire me. You don't have any cause. I'll take you to court. It's America. You can always take people to court. Friday's piece, we skipped over Thursday's, which was a response to Wednesday this week, which was kind of a big day. But Friday's piece was slow on subjugation. One of the things I do is go through a little of the history of China in Hong Kong, because this week they arrested 53 democracy activists, people who ran for office or helped them run for office, attempting to run for office. And they were arrested under the national security law. And of course, there was a professor at Notre Dame who was shocked, and said that this sort of crackdown seems to imply that the China-Nazis want to subjugate all of Hong Kong. Well, that's exactly what they want to do. But I endorse this piece of mine. Please go there. Slow on subjugation. There's links to more. And if you're interested in what's happening with China, what's happened in Hong Kong, what the threat they're making against Taiwan, there's a search engine, and search CCP or China or China-Nazis or Taiwan or Hong Kong, and you're going to find a lot of information and links to more information, because any common sense script is going to have links to more information. I'm not, this isn't the Bible. I'm not laying down the law. I'm commenting on what's happening in our world, with the goal being that you will take that, educate yourself, as I've tried to do. And look, I know I'm working, this isn't the main thing I do. I'm a working stiff too, trying to do political stuff. So of course, when I'm learning, I'm constantly thinking, oh no, I need to do more. It's a grind. But I'm trying to make it as easy as I can for you. And in fact, if you see ways that I can make it easier for you, you can leave a message at YouTube. You can at our website. You can always leave a comment. But I take friendly advice and friendly criticism. In fact, I even take it if it's not that friendly. It's good for us.
Now that we're ready to go in on Thursday's piece, right? We're just panting for it. I wanted to mention that on January 4th, I posted something on Facebook that I thought at the time was just one of the things I say on Facebook, which are mild provocations. And I wrote, the only sure way to get Democratic politicians to stop rioting is for non-Democrats to riot.
Wow.
So that's what I wrote on January 4th.
So in a sense, you incited what happened at the Capitol.
It's not Trump, it's me.
I don't have your address at the top of my head, but I mean, surely the SWAT team will be there to get you. We tape this usually on Friday. We always dream about taping it on Friday afternoon, but it's usually Friday night. And I watched Tucker Carlson, and my wife just doesn't like his tone and other stuff. Can't stand him. I have other friends who can't stand him. And there was early in his career, he had a dust up where I thought was kind of a complete jerk to Grover Norquist, who I think is a patriot and a scholar. And so I never have liked him really in a personal way. Not that I knew him or had any big grievance or really cared one way or the other, but my sense of him was kind of negative. But I keep telling people, I want to hear from Glenn Greenwald. I think he's one of the most interesting and effective and helpful to me journalists in the whole world. And I don't know where he's ever on except Democracy Now! And I'm going to forget the woman's name. I was just trying to pull it up in my old computer up here. I can't think of her name, but Democracy Now!, which is on PBS stations, very left-wing show, will have Glenn Greenwald on sometimes. I don't know about recently because, he did say a few things critical about Biden, and I don't know if that's allowed. But we did the script, of course, about you may remember, what was that title? Because I think you came up with the title, but it was the editor's conceit. Was that what it was? But it's basically his editors at the Intercept saying we're not going to publish your piece unless you take out the negative stuff about Joe Biden. And so he quit the newspaper or the publication, the online media source that he had started. But anyway, I was watching Tucker Carlson, and he had on Glenn Greenwald. And, we need some media outlet somewhere that would allow some voices that otherwise don't get heard. A very anti-war voice, a very anti-national security state voice. And let's all remember, as all these final days of trying to hammer out a legacy for Donald Trump, one way or another, that Donald Trump's most popular moment with the left-wing media that I would say is far to the left of the Democratic Party, but the left-wing media, the best day that Donald Trump had was when he bombed Syria. Bombing Syria. And there was a chemical attack. It now pretty much looks like that wasn't the government's chemical attack, that we got punked, and it was feckless. It was bombing something that could be repaired in 2 seconds. I mean, it was silly theater. And the MSNBC and CNN just lapped it up. And Vance Jones, is that the right name? Van Jones, yeah, not Vance, Van Jones, who often says stuff that I kind of like. I find him to be an interesting person to be discussing things on television. It was always kind of hit because as a young man, he was a communist, kind of accepted the C word. But he made the comment that Donald Trump became our president today. And it was just, oh my goodness. Anyway, Glenn Greenwald was talking about the danger, just like after 9/11, of all this hysteria and hype, and instead of thoughtful concern where adult citizens throughout the country discuss and think about what are we going to do and how do we make sure that certain things don't happen again, without, of course, killing the golden goose of freedom in America and free speech. I mean, we like it here. And so that's a very valuable thing. And I think we're going to be talking a lot more about free speech because we're going to be told again and again and again that the cause of this violence was what people said. And oftentimes what they said when they didn't say anything about violence. And I think that that's a big problem. Now, I was disappointed with Trump's speech at the Ellipse, at the rally, and then the folks marched to the Capitol. I think it was irresponsible. He's often been sophomoric, a cad, a complete narcissist, clueless in all kinds of ways. But I don't think there's several people have said he should be arrested or impeached. And I think it's a huge mistake because I think the last thing you want to do now, sometimes when someone does something that's wrong, you just let it just sit there. And I think the way he talked was not the right way to talk. But I think if you were a citizen who said the same thing, if I said that at a rally, and then some people marched to the Capitol and smashed in, I would not be thinking I did anything to suggest that. One of the things he said was to be strong, don't be weak, and so on and so on. That's not the sort of rhetoric I'm using if I'm talking to someone, but that is not the same thing as go smash into the Capitol. And one of the things that the media has done all along during this post-election period, which I think is Donald Trump's worst period, bar none. I think he has behaved worse since the election than his entire presidency. just because it is so important, I think, George Washington stepping down after 2 terms is probably the best thing that anyone ever did for freedom in America. It's the most powerful thing that he didn't have to be dragged out of that place. And people have talked all along like idiots about, the military will have to come in to drag Trump out, or he's going to try to use the military and so on. And I've had absolutely zero worry about the military getting involved in any of that crap. And not so much because of my faith in Donald Trump, mind you, but in my faith in the American military as adult people. We're not asking for superhuman statesmanship here, just a little adulthood. But this attack on the Capitol, I wanted to write something about it, and I think we're still learning all kinds of things. But I thought it was important, especially after this summer and all the rioting and destruction. I think that Trump folks have all kinds of cause to be upset. I think the media, if the media believes that to engage in politics, you ought to have to do all the campaign finance reform stuff and go through all the regulation that my organizations do, that other organizations do, they probably should, because they have so much more power. And they have used it in such a partisan and vicious and nasty way from second one. And this is after falling in love with Donald Trump, falling in love with him and covering him to what some people said was billions of dollars of positive, warm, loving coverage while he's running for the Republican nomination. And then he is an abomination and the most horrible person who's ever lived. And all kinds of things may or may not be true about Donald Trump. But we have seen the American media, and the American media is not a referee. The American media, with the exception of Fox News and One America Network, I don't know how many people get it. I don't get it here. I've been on it before, but I don't get it here. I know in my childhood home state of Arkansas, it's there.
You mean it's on the airwaves there? It's on cable there?
It is on cable. If you're on cable, you can get it. So you've got Fox and One America Network, and then you've got ABC, CBS, NBC, which is everywhere, MSNBC, which is pretty much everywhere Fox is, CNN. And you've got the New York Times, and you've got the Washington Post, and all of those were adamantly anti-Trump. Now on talk radio, going to be much more pro-Trump. Not 100% by any stretch, but much more pro-Trump. But so there's a lot to say. The one thing I said first was everybody who committed a crime, we need to prosecute, and that needs to be the rule. We prosecute people when they commit crimes, and I'm not talking about, someone spray painted the statue and, we're going to put him in jail for 10 years. In Hong Kong, if you say down with China, you could get a life prison term. That's not smart. And that's not the type of world I want to live in. And so spray painting that Capitol building or smashing through something, that's a serious crime. That's not just spray painting a statue somewhere. But I don't know. Should those people be in jail for 30 days? Should it be 60 days? Should it be no jail, but they pay a big fine? We should be debating this. But here's the thing we can't do. We can't say, we're just going to drop it.
But do you think that they should get more than the people who torn down all those statues without permission all year long?
No, not necessarily. You would have to look at each individual case, because that's the sort of justice we have. We're a jury and a judge, and we have to look at each individual case. But no, because the moment you say that, what you're saying are, political crimes on this side of the ledger are really not so bad. It's okay if we terrorize, if we intimidate, if we smash, if we burn, if we loot. But it's not okay if you smash, if you loot, if you break in, if you stop the functioning of democracy. And that's been a big thing. Oh, this was an attack on a sacred institution. Well, let me tell you something. You're better than I at definitions. But sacred involves something of a higher order, and the United States Congress is not sacred. Let me assure you of that. But it is a serious thing to attack that. It's also a serious thing to attack someone's store and to burn it to the ground, something they've lived and sweat and blood they've put into that store. So I don't think we should have, there's this sense that, well, this is everybody's. I think that's the difference between smashing somebody's store and smashing the Capitol is not that big. It's smashing that is the problem. And we have to start saying anybody who smashes, anybody who burns and loots and intimidates and punches people in the face, they're going to have something coming. And I'll tell you what, as much as I think there should have been a lot more arrests this summer in these riots, not at the protests. And we try to be careful. Sometimes, people can slip. But this is commonsense.org. We try to be careful in calling protesters and calling insurgents or rioters or thugs something else. And of course, Thursday's piece was called Mostly Peaceful Protest with a question mark and noting with links to some of the great things where they talked about the peaceful protest with burning behind. The one thing that we should not lose sight of is the people who protested at Black Lives Matter protests have a very legitimate grievance and care about things. Now, I look at their solutions and think, wow, I kind of see where you want to go, and I can't imagine a worse direction to travel to get to a more terrible place. Because I think it's almost a cultural revolution type attitude where the government's going to decide everybody's exact worth from some sort of historical, biological DNA makeup and of race and privilege and wealth and it's a mess. But the criminal justice in this country and what we've said all along, because we've done a lot of stuff on this, conservatives are for criminal justice reform. Liberals are for criminal justice reform. Moderates are for criminal justice reform. And the truth is, I think any of them pushed in the light of day to talk about whether there should be any police at all are going to say, yes, there should be. And I think they're going to recognize that, yes, when someone is smashing something or spray painting it or burning it down, that's not okay and that person needs to be arrested. So I was very disappointed that more people weren't arrested this summer. And I'm glad that they are arresting the people who broke into the Capitol. But there's been a lot, like Biden, one of the first things that I hear him say is his anger seems to be that these white folks, mostly white folks, because there were a lot of non-white people in that crowd. And by a lot, I mean maybe 5, 10, 15%. I don't know. I'm usually not searching with that lens. But he wants to make a big deal because the police weren't tougher and rougher. And, one woman was shot dead. Should she have been shot more times? Should more people have been shot? And I think here she is smashing windows and trying to crawl through was the argument. I saw the tape. I think it's very difficult to really tell whether she was actually trying to crawl through or just reaching through or whatever. Your mom and dad would tell you don't be in places like that doing stuff like that because bad things can happen. But I still think calmly after the fact, we have to look at whether that was the right response, whether that policeman shooting his gun and killing her was the right response. Now, you're also hearing that there are 5 deaths. There is a policeman who was in some sort of altercation. It's reported that he was hit by one of those big fire extinguishers. And you can imagine, it's a big metal thing. You can get your head knocked off with that. And apparently that's what happened. Not a lot of details, but it's the kind of thing where he went back to the office, I think went home, or maybe went to the hospital, maybe went home and then to the hospital. He died in the night from the injury. So it didn't happen as part of combat exactly, but it did. And it's a homicide. Someone's guilty of murder. So this is a serious thing. Now, there were also 3 other people who had medical emergencies outside the Capitol. And maybe they got agitated, had a heart attack. We don't know. There's just no details. I just think it's silly journalism to be talking about 5 dead. It just, had I tripped and hit my head as I was going to the metro near there, would that have been 6? It just seems silly. And I say that not so much because, it's a big deal. It's not going to be everything. But you understand media is going to hype stuff. It is important that there be some limits to that, I think. And I do worry. I think Glenn Greenwald is right on target that we are likely to see a lot of restrictions. Here's something else. Twitter shutting down the President of the United States' account. And, they're a private company. They have the right to do it. Now, I think they ought to be dealt with the same way as all other private companies that are doing the same sorts of things. And I do think that we've got to change the law there that allows them to pretend that they're a platform, because of course now both Google and Apple are threatening Parler. I just signed up for Parler tonight when I found that out. I have a MeWe page. I haven't really done that much there, a little bit, but I just signed up for Parler, knowing that I may not be able to get to it through my iPhone otherwise. And I would suggest everybody out there, just in case, you might want to go download Parler's app for your phone, because if you have an iPhone, in a matter of minutes, hours, days, you may not be able to do so.
Though I think that if Apple wants to get rid of it, it'll just automatically delete off your phone.
Well, they might do that too, but make Apple start deleting your apps. I don't think my next phone is going to be an iPhone. And I have all kinds of issues with Apple, but this is a big one. One of the main things that caused me to get a second iPhone, because as you know, Tim, I bitch and moan about electronics and technology and the internet and computers all the time. I'm old, but one of the reasons I re-upped with Apple was that they refused to give the FBI the ability to get a backdoor into their system. In other words, they said our customers' privacy is worth enough that we're not going to just hand the government. And some people would think, well, what if there's a terror attack? There's this, there's that. Like this is called terrorism, what happened at the Capitol. What if there is? I don't want the government to have that. And if they have it, they don't need a terrorist attack. As we already know, the courts have already told us that they got the ability, not the right, not the legal authorization, but the ability to grab up all of our bank records, all of our telephone calls, all of our social media. The government got the ability, the technical ability to do that. They had no legal right to do it. That's what the judge said. And they did it. And they lied about it, bald-faced to Congress.
Clapper did.
Well, Clapper was the head. When people say there's no deep state, How could what I have just said is true, and there's no other evidence needed?
It also didn't really incense the, our guardians of public morality, that is the major media. They weren't very interested in the subject either. They never seemed to really take to it.
Think about had that happened during Trump's term. It would have been wall-to-wall coverage. They would have been demanding impeachment. They would have demanded impeachment, as well they should. As well they should. And as president, your defense might be, I didn't know the deep state was running the country instead of me. I'm really sorry. I'm on your side. But I suspect that maybe Obama did know. But these are serious crimes. Well, think of how serious it was that George W. Bush, like I think during recent times, I've had so many friends talk about, it just seems so weird. Things you never thought would happen are happening. Kind of like I'm starting to flip out about how crazy this world is becoming. Well, think all the way back to, what was it, 2003? When George W. Bush, his Justice Department, arrested Jose Padilla and held him without charge. How many months? I forget. I don't know if it was more than 6. I think it was 8, 10 before they ever charged him. That is spitting in the face of everything, not only that America stands for. That's like going back to the Magna Carta and going, no, you got it wrong. The king should have more power. I mean, that is insane. It's against all of the Western idea of people having rights. Oh, and it was a story. On when he was arrested, it was a story on page 1, and what happened, finally to force the government to charge him or release him, was a story on page A16 a couple of times during the year. So we have, I think, an ongoing problem here where there is going to be more speech controls. There is going to be more investigations of political people. There is going to, all of it is, let's demand more and more and more control and less free discussion. And I think we've got to really, we are in, I think, for a hell of a battle. I was kind of hoping to, just kind of ride off in the sunset in my golden years.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Oh.
But go ahead.
Go ahead. I was actually going to ask you, what's your, now that we're a couple days removed, what are your thoughts on where this is likely to go and what's happening?
Well, I think that the big thing about the deep state is, and what people tend to forget, is it's not just the state. The deep state is at its core the military-industrial complex, and that includes some of the biggest corporations in the world. They're international, and they're huge, and they have the power. Congress gave them the power to make top-secret things and not share information that they have with people in government. So they don't have much oversight. Corporations are a huge part of the deep state, and I think that the media is just the most obvious element of that. But Apple, Google, Amazon, these corporations, they may get a lot of money selling us stuff that we like, but they also have contracts with the government. And nevertheless, they treat themselves as if they're a private company. Well, as I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong on this, is that if you're a major manufacturer of guns and munitions and special weaponry, and you make contracts with the U.S. government, you're not allowed to sell them just to anybody you want or have any policies you want. Right. You're under the laws they're under the supervision of the U.S. government. Well, these major corporations are behaving not under the control or playing by the rules of the First Amendment, for instance, because they're private, you see. But they aren't private because they're contractors of the U.S. government. And Trump spent 4 years doing nothing about this problem. He just tweeted. And I think that my Trumpian friends, are going to have to come to the realization that Trump betrayed them, that he just sat around blathering and tweeting, and he didn't do what he should have. And that means that the deep state is going to be in deep control now with COVID, that we have the chance for a complete totalitarian control of us, because people now fear us, because we might breathe something on them. And so we are going to could very well have a totalitarian system that's corporate and government together, but not controlled by any of the laws that you thought government is controlled by. That's what I think.
Well, that's a nice thought. No, and when you say totalitarian, our script on Friday, I kind of debated what percentage totalitarian to say China was.
Yeah, it started at 4/5 or something like that.
4/5, and I went to 99%. But it's interesting because I've talked about the United States of America as the freest totalitarian country in history. Like, one thing that I would think is totalitarian, I'm not sure I like the way and I may have COVID, so maybe I won't need the vaccine. But the way the vaccine was developed, I'm not sure that I'm A-okay with taking it. It's kind of a new thing, and I'm just thinking, what's the danger to me by COVID? What's the danger by the thing? So, the judge has not decided that yet. But if our government decides everybody must take it, that to me is a totalitarian government. There's nothing in the Constitution that suggests they have the right to stick needles in you when you haven't committed any crime. And so much of what's happened this whole year, it would be wrong if the legislature had gotten together and voted for it. But they didn't. We had the script about Whitmer in Michigan, where the court said, you don't have any power to do what you're doing. And then, of course, later the attorney general said they're going to keep doing it anyway. That's when they started the recall there. But let me say about Trump, I don't like the word betray. And it may be that he betrayed them.
Well,
but it may be that he's just not sophisticated enough. In a sense, I think a lot of what people didn't like about Trump is that he's a big talking, he hasn't, like when Hillary Clinton said in the debate, some of us prepare for these things. Trump's the kind of guy who doesn't prepare. He's winging it. And so I don't think he had the operation with it. I mean, think of how tough it is to run a government. This is not an easy task. This is not like running Walmart. It's tougher. And so this is, I just think he didn't see it. So many people I saw on Facebook recently have said declassify everything. And I think that says a lot. We want to know. I mean, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. And there's still stuff classified on that. We can't know the truth of what happened. The whole, we've talked about UFOs some, where they just, they finally have come out now and said, yeah, we're seeing all these things and we have no real explanation. But for years they lied about it.
And they're almost certainly still lying about it. They're almost certainly not telling us what they know.
Right.
We know that.
Right.
They've studied it for a long time, and they've just kept things classified. To what degree the president is told about this, we don't know exactly. Though it looks like Barack Obama knows is quite a bit.
Well, he made that quip, but I don't know if that. I mean, that could be a quip to cover and make it look like he knows certain things that he doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
But again, and you talked about it earlier with the secrecy on different things. When it's secret, you don't know. And so look at the FISA abuse. Is anyone shocked that there was FISA abuse? It's a process no one's looking at. They can't look at it. So we have got to avoid that. And look, I know there has to be some, you can't be constantly putting out things going, our patrol, our shoreline, military patrol is right here, right now. I mean, because you don't want to tell the enemy. There's certain secrets that have to be kept. We cannot have secret courts, not in the way we've had them. Maybe you can have more secrecy than you would in a normal court. We got to find ways to do this. If Americans think that we can have a government of experts who tells us how to do everything and knows everything and when we can open our businesses and when we can't, and has secret courts and all kinds of stuff that we know is going on they won't tell us about, and be free?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, that sounds like an end of a podcast.
I think it is.
Well, you get better. See if you can get better, though. It took me weeks to get over what I had last year, so.
Well, the thing that makes me a little upset is that I'm usually pretty good when I get sick to just sleep. And I like to sleep. I don't get to do it nearly enough, and I'm pretty good at it. But I've just been so busy, I haven't been able to. And so let's hope that over the weekend I can do some of that.
And I should mention, as a point of clarification, you brought up a piece written on October 30th, 2020. The title I chose had nothing to do with the title you were talking about. It was called "The Itch to Edit." Is the piece's title?
Yes.
Okay, so and I'll put that image on the screen for the video viewers.
Great. All right. Well, good night, America. And boy, we got our work cut out for us. And don't smash anything.
Okay.
Build up. Let's build up. Maybe what we ought to do is build up a political army of peaceful people who are putting laws on the ballot in cities and towns and states to make criminal justice reform happen, to hold government officials accountable, to open up the economic system, maybe get rid of some of the licensing laws that block people from competing in the marketplace. There's got to be all kinds of things that we could do. That might send a signal that, wait a second, the public is active and doing things, because I'm convinced. I mean, I have, we never say goodbye. It's going to be another 6 hours. No, I was scared of Donald Trump, but I liked a number of things he did, especially waking up to China, because I think they're the biggest threat in the world. I'm really against totalitarianism and concentration camps and stuff. And the reason so many people liked him was because he was the bull in the china shop. He was the guy who would fight in Washington and not be cowed by the press and others, and start being mealy mouthed, and he was that. But it's tough for one guy if the way we're going to keep our American Republic, which has been pretty free, not an oasis of utopian freedom, let's all face it, but pretty darn free in a history of mankind that's had very little of pretty free. If we're going to keep it, it's not going to be because one politician sets everything right. They're not good. They can get one guy. We really do have to organize, and we really do have to participate. And we're going to have to participate with people who don't agree with us on every single issue. It's not, if it's a religion, it doesn't really work either. We need a mass effort at reform on all kinds of things, which will allow at least the people to be in charge. Because I'm not worried about winning on every single little issue, because I know I won't. But I am worried about who decides. And if the American people decide, if there's a fair process that we can participate in, I'm convinced we have a shot. And if there's not, we obviously don't have a shot. And I think that is the anger behind people who supported Donald Trump right now, is that we just can't fight the power. And if you think about it, that's the anger of a lot of people in the Black Lives Matter, is we just can't fight the power. No matter what we do, there's too many things going on, and there's too much power against us. And you know what? We can fight the power. We damn well better. And we ought to look to do it together as much as we can. Years ago, this is my last comment, then I'll shut the heck up. Years ago, Ralph Nader did a book. I think it was called Unstoppable. But he called for a coalition of libertarians and free market conservatives and progressives to work on all kinds of issues, transparency issues and criminal justice reform issues. And, you know, we need to be open to doing the right thing in our communities. And it's almost any step we could take to vote on a very simple measure in your town that would just repair a little bit. It's not going to solve, we're not going to, you know, one initiative and we've solved the whole world. But any little step like that, it brings people together. It is the start of doing something about it. And if we're not going to do anything about it, then why talk and listen?
Well, that's a weird way to end a piece.
Yeah, that was bad. All right, cut. Maybe it's a Monty Python ending. A rabbit, a killer rabbit, will come attack me now. Could you do that? Maybe CGI?
Yeah, I have to hire that out. I think that somebody else has to do that. By the way, I think that Trump did show us something really important. He showed us that the swamp and the deep state, or what I'm now calling the deep blue state, is much more powerful and complicated than he thought. He thought that business sense, and I have lots of friends who supported him because a businessman could just take control and get things done. We know that's not possible. Because yes, a businessman could do it if it were that simple. But but I think that actually it's too complicated a system. You have to have somebody who knows a lot. You have to have lots of people who know a lot, and that's why we have to know things, and that's why we have to be doing what we do.
Yes. No, that's a good point. The people who say, I want to run government like a business. Well, do you run your business by holding elections to decide how you're going to do the next thing you do? I don't think so. Let's I have nothing left except for COVID. But anyway, I'm going to survive, and next week we'll be talking about more common sense. And unfortunately, I'm sure we'll be talking about the lack thereof as well.
Okay. See ya.
Thanks, man.
Bye.